The punchline of life is not wealth, it's not fame, it's not admiration. It's how you feel about yourself when you're by yourself.
Hey everybody, welcome to Impact Theory.
We're living through an era where value is the most potent marketing campaign you can ever run. I loved the idea of telling stories that impacted a lot of people. That becomes the real passion. A set of skills that matter to you, that you work extraordinarily hard to build, that allow you to serve not only yourself, but other people. And if you can make your business about that, then you're good. But I'm really getting scared that people no longer believe in class mobility. It's like having a fixed mindset. If you don't believe that your talent and intelligence are malleable traits, that is a shitty life. I really, really want people to understand. I was lazy and fearful that I wasn't good enough. I used to come home and lay on the carpet because I couldn't fucking afford furniture and think, what the fuck am I doing with my life? I remember somebody saying to me, don't you hope I'm right? And I was like, fuck, I actually do hope you're right. I do hope I can get better at anything, at any time, just by putting in energy and effort. Why would you shut the door on something you want to be true? Like, go explore it. Don't just offhand say, no, it's not possible. It's not like that. It's not what it is. When you realize there is a process to go from hopelessly average to accomplishing something really extraordinary, you can get the result. Don't you hope I'm right?
The world is changing. Inspiration is everywhere. It has never been so easy to connect, share, and bring people together. We're learning from others and finding the best in ourselves. Challenging our beliefs. Sharing our vulnerability. Overcoming our fears. Transforming ourselves so we can transform the world. How far can we go?
This is London Real. I am Brian Rose. My guest today is You might know Tom Bilyeu as the host of Impact Theory, and even the guy that sold his company, Quest Nutrition, for over $1 billion. But most people don't know that Tom started off with very humble beginnings. He actually used to live in London, and he was sleeping at his girlfriend's parents' house. He was broke as a joke, he had no motivation, and most of his life was a failure. And that wasn't until he started channeling something called the growth mindset. Most of us live in a fixed mindset where we think our talents and our resources are fixed, as opposed to admitting that they can become greater in the future. And once Tom started doing this, everything started changing for him. And that's what his show Impact Theory is all about. It's about channeling us all to get into that growth mindset. Much of this is what we try to do here at London Real as well. And so I love sitting down with Tom. He's so honest about his failings in the past, and to see him now at the top of his game, it's a great lesson to all of us. So sit back and enjoy this incredible episode with Tom Bilyeu. This is London Real. I am Brian Rose. My guest today is Tom Bilyeu, the American entrepreneur, broadcaster, CEO of Impact Theory, and co-founder of Quest Nutrition, the billion-dollar company known for its revolutionary culture and mission. Now, you are the host of Impact Theory, a mindset-focused company featuring long-form conversations with guests like David Goggins, Simon Sinek, and Tim Ferriss, with more than 120 episodes that have been viewed over 100 million times. Last year, you published Neon Future, your first comic book series created with the two-time Grammy-nominated Steve Aoki, and you plan to release books, movies, and television shows in the future. Tom, welcome back to London Real.
Thank you, man. It's good to be here.
Dude, it's great to have you back. First of all, what's it like coming back to London? I know you lived here back in the day at kind of Tom Bilyeu version 1.0. You know, that was so different than you are now, and I want to talk about that more later, but what's it like coming back to this city?
It's amazing. My in-laws are here, and I love my in-laws to death. So this isn't one of those where it's like I'm being drugged. So every time I come back here, I have a great time. And I think it's really powerful because I'm coming back to my mother-in-law's house where we always stay. So we go from this like Beverly Hills mansion to staying in like, this very sort of middle class London house. And we're up in the bedroom that my wife grew up in, on the squeaky bed. And it's cool to be back, man. And there's no substitute for being around people you love. And feeling at home, I think, is far more intoxicating than like being in luxurious environments. So it's pretty awesome.
And you've never been the luxury guy, have you?
Definitely not.
I know you, or I've heard you have a nice place that's also your business, in LA, but like you're not the guy that needs to be in the jet or the Four Seasons Hotel or anything.
My wife and I were just talking about that. So
even though you could be.
Yeah, I grew up in Tacoma, Washington.
Right.
And, as they should say, even if they don't, you can take the boy out of Tacoma, but you can't take the Tacoma out of the boy. So it's like growing up like that, like those are my roots. I still like chicken nuggets and French fries. Like that's my jam. I don't eat it. I want to. Right. But yeah, so for me, I do like that stuff. Like to me, a house is like a piece of art that you can live in. I've always had a fetish for like a big house. That I just knew as a kid, that's what I'm aiming at. Some people want cars and all that stuff. I wanted a cool house. But it's not about like the fancy stuff. And so for me, we were talking a minute ago, I'm not worried about losing my money. Like if I lost my money, I'd be fine. I'm worried about brain damage, and I'm worried about losing my wife. So I think there are some people that the money is part of their identity, and that very much is not true for me. So money did not in any way, shape, or form change how I felt about myself, which I think is good because it means that's why I'm not afraid of losing it. But the person you have to become to get the wealth, that means something to me. And that's why brain damage scares me so much, because that would take that away.
Right, so your two greatest assets are your wife and your mind.
Yes.
Because now in your life, that with your growth mindset, you can create and you can always be in a great place. And the money will come if that's what you want. Whereas back in the day, maybe you didn't know that.
I didn't, and I'll take slight exception to that, and it'll be interesting to hear what your thoughts are. So when people say, if you just want it and you're going after it, it's going to happen. I will tell a very different story. So anybody listening, let me tell you this: the struggle is guaranteed. The success is not. The money may never come. So every great success story has a certain element of timing. There's a certain amount of luck that goes into it. Now, you have to be prepared to be able to capitalize on that. Like the inhuman amount of work that we did to launch Quest, to launch Impact Theory, most people just are definitely not going to work that hard, that tenaciously for that long, or get that good and face their inadequacies day after day. But at the same time, for it to be the kind of success that it was, there was timing involved. So it became readily apparent to me that I may never get rich, but I could definitely do something that I loved every day. And so what I know is, even if I lost my money, that through simple things like being grateful, being willing to build from the ground up again, putting in the work, doing something that's meaningful, serving not just myself but other people, I can live a life that's fulfilling. And since that's the only thing that really affects your neurochemistry, because I'm always telling people, look, the punchline of life is not wealth, it's not fame, it's not admiration, it's how you feel about yourself when you're by yourself. That doesn't require wealth. In fact, wealth can't touch that. So now becoming a badass, like that will make you feel good about yourself. And that's something that nobody can take away. So it's like my focus is all around that. I think making money is really fucking hard. So it's like I'm not fooling myself. I'm trying to build the next Disney, right? But I know that the odds of me actually pulling that off are essentially zero. So it becomes a thing of love the process.
Right, just keep loving it no matter what. What do you say to people who make fun of people that say pursue your passion?
Well, I think it's actually advice pointed in the right direction. So if you had said, what do I think of people that say, find your passion? I will say they mean very well, but they don't understand what passion actually is. So I think because a rare breed of individual develops a passion when they're young, they then mistake it for, I found my passion, but that's not really true. So I'll walk you through my own. So I loved movies as a kid. So that is what I call, you get that first glimmer of enjoyment. You're interested in that thing. So I was interested in films. And then it became, my dad brought home a video camera, and that allowed me to engage with it. Now, engaging with the filmmaking process made me realize, whoa, I'm not interested in this, I'm fascinated by it. And the more I learned about it, the more I wanted to learn. And so that led me to film school. And then in film school, I began mastering my craft. Now, the pursuit of mastery, when you realize that you can not only do something for yourself, but you can influence the world. And through this filmmaking, I could actually have an impact on other people. That becomes the real passion, because you're developing this set of skills that means something to you, and it allows you to do something in the world that other people cannot do. So it goes interest to fascination through engagement, engagement to mastery through the learning process. And if at that point you like the way it makes you feel to do it and to impact the people the way that you're impacting them, then that's your passion. But passion is like this, it's like love, if I may. It has to be requited. If it's unrequited and you're doing something but the world doesn't care about it, I don't think it will ever really be a passion. It's got to be something that gives you this positive feedback loop.
And something that ultimately helps other people?
I think that that's so innate to the human condition that yes, if you're just serving yourself, I don't think it will ever be quite the optimistic, uplifting, self-continuing thing that it could otherwise be, which makes me think of the Unabomber. So do you know much about him?
Yeah, I know a good amount.
All
yeah.
right, so I don't know a
Kaczynski.
ton, but
Okay.
I know exactly. I know his core thesis, which was, the reason he was the Unabomber was he was trying to kill professors, because he believed there was a sweet spot in human knowledge where it was, you had to work really, really hard to be able to solve a given problem. But it was within the reach of the human mind. And he felt like if it were too easy, then you could never have, I don't think he used the word fulfillment, but you'd never have that sense of accomplishment. And if it was too hard, you couldn't do it. So there was like this sweet spot of problems. And he felt that the university systems were solving all of the problems in the sweet spot. And so he wanted to bring the institutions down. And I thought, I actually really get that. But that's like a dark passion, right? That's somebody who's coming from a fearful place. He's not trying to serve people. He's mentally unstable, so let's start with that. But you get somebody who gets into a dark energy, and then it just becomes a total mess. So when you're serving other people and you're doing something that uplifts other people, but with a skill set that you had to work your ass off to get, and it's a skill set that you love, and you love the acquisition of that skill set, then there's like and I hate these sort of weak words, but like there's a light airiness to it that feels uplifting. And if you can get in that loop, then you're good.
Now, when you were at film school, when you thought of all the people you could help with your films, did you realize, okay, I'm giving back in that way, that feels good? Or
Definitely
do you think you were young and you thought, I'll be famous and
Correct.
This is cool because it scales?
100%, I was a moron.
Okay. But there maybe been an innate thing in there, maybe.
I don't know. Yeah, I mean, so I'll give myself this. I loved the idea of telling stories that impacted a lot of people. I was not trying to change their life or uplift them the way that I am now. I was just trying to tell them a rad story. But I remember saying to my fellow students, like, one of the first decisions that we have to make as filmmakers is, are we here to masturbate or are we here to make love? Because there was this whole thing about art films, and I don't give a shit about the audience, I just want to make a film that I love. And I was like, man, movies cost a lot of money. Like, if you really want to make it a business, you've got to think about the audience. You've got to make something that's going to resonate with people. And so that always put me in the mindset of not necessarily serving the audience, but I want to give them something that they're going to love. I want to give them that emotional roller coaster, which is ultimately what people go to the movies for, is have their neurochemistry played with. The same reason people take drugs, right? Like, you want your neurochemistry played with. So I was at least aware enough to want that, but it was definitely about, I want to get rich and famous, and
Yeah, and I did the same thing till I was 40. I was just in this kind of American mindset of money will make you happy and this American dream. But at 40, I finally realized as an engineer that the money was not making me any happier, and I just ejected after actually learning how to meditate, and it gave me a little bit of perspective on me. And that's why I started doing this, because ultimately I think something deep down inside me craved the connection and craved doing something for the greater good. And yeah, it was both of those things, I think. Maybe in a selfish way, because I was going to destruct if I didn't get that. So yeah, I just want to just say what you just said in just a quote from you on the Rich Roll show, which you kind of just said, but I just want to make it very clear to everybody. You said, fulfillment is a universal formula. Work your ass off to get very good at something that you care deeply about, that allows you to not only serve yourself, but also other people. That feeling which will survive through moments of suffering, hardship, and loss, that will make you feel good about yourself when you are by yourself. I love that last part because I haven't heard anyone else say that, because it's easy to feel good sometimes when you're around people. But when you're alone, like you said, what we all want to do is look in the mirror and just say, today, you were a bad motherfucker. That was badass. That's the only reason I do this, just to have those moments where that was badass, and then I can go to bed and just with that little smile on my face.
You just gave me the chills, 100%.
And then the next day you wake up and you got to try to do it again in another way. And the service to others is something that it just took me a long time to understand. Like when I was a kid, I remember reading about the Kennedys, and they were always like giving back and like doing all this volunteer charity stuff, and it just didn't even compute to me as a young man. But now it's so obvious. It's also so immediate on how good it makes me feel and how it seems to rack up all this karmic, collateral. So what do your in-laws think of Tom when they watch this guy who was in London in what? Oh, were you 05, 06 or something?
No, earlier. So I lived here in 2002, 2003.
Okay. So they saw this guy pre-Quest, pre-mastering his body, pre-fixed mindset. Well, I want to talk about that later. And now you come back and you're just this weird prodigal son. Who knows what they make of you now? But I mean, what do they say? I'm sure that Lisa's mother has pulled you aside and said, Tom, we weren't sure about you, or we always loved you, or, you know what I mean? What do they say? Because if anyone doesn't see, Tom posts pictures sometimes of you as old, like out of shape Tom, or Tom at Quest Nutrition starting off. And like I said, your eyes look different. It's almost like they're the fixed mindset eyes. So anyways, tell me if I'm crazy, and what do the in-laws say about?
So, well, first I'll tell you what my own mother says about me.
Okay.
So she said, because when I left home, she kicked me out. So I panicked and didn't want to leave for college. None of my friends were leaving the state. I was one of only 2 people in my graduating class to leave the state. And so I was like, Mom, maybe I should just stay and go to the school everyone else is going to. She was like, absolutely not. You're going to go. You're going to chase your dream. And then, I'm not joking, has spent every day since trying to get me to move back home.
Of course.
So one day after getting successful, I said, this is hilarious. Like, why'd you kick me out? I wouldn't have left if you hadn't kicked me out. And she said, oh, I just always assumed you were going to fail. And I was like, whoa, you were my biggest cheerleader. And she was like, of course, like I wanted you to win, but you were so lazy. She was like, I just didn't expect you to succeed. And then my best friend growing up recently told me, oh yeah, I just always assumed you were going to marshmallow your way through life. And then when I went to propose, I had to go ask my father-in-law for his blessing first, and he said no. So he was like, how are you going to take care of my daughter? And I said, sir, look, I know what you see is an undereducated kid who's broke. At the time, I didn't even have a job. And you're worried, I get that. But I'm telling you, I'm the most ambitious person you've ever met. And one day I'm going to make your daughter rich. And that's like hanging in the air, right?
Okay. And were you the most ambitious time, or did you believe it?
Yeah, no.
So
I really,
were ambitious.
Dude, my ambition is crazy. And it's the one thing that I don't like because I don't feel like I earned it. I've always been ambitious.
Okay, you just didn't know what to do with it or where to go or...
100%. And more terrifyingly, I really was lazy and still am lazy, quite frankly.
Okay.
So
you can be ambitious and lazy at the same time.
Yes.
Okay.
So here's what I want people to understand. There is a difference between ambition, which I have always had, and drive, which is actually going to help you make good on your ambition. So most people are what I call an empty dreamer. They have a big dream, they never do anything about it, they're 20 years later and they're talking, they're still gonna do it. When are you gonna do it? I'm working on it. They don't ever actually buckle down and hold themselves accountable. So in saying that to my father-in-law and telling my then girlfriend, now wife, that I'm gonna make you rich one day, it began to be this like shame on me. And I used to refer to my wife as a witness to my crimes. And suddenly not getting up and not going to work, because I would lay in bed 4 or 5 hours a day. This is my mid-20s. So 4 or 5 hours a day, I'm laying in bed all day, every day, not getting out of bed.
Depressed?
No, I always say I was sliding towards depression, but I wasn't depressed. I was lazy.
Okay.
And lazy and fearful that I wasn't good enough. So my whole thing is, have you seen Amadeus, the movie?
Yeah, I actually don't remember watching it. I know of it.
Watch it. It's so
Spielberg, right? The slave.
No.
Oh, no.
It's Amadeus, you're thinking of Armistead.
Yeah, you're right. Amadeus is, it's about, what's his name?
Mozart.
Yeah, Mozart.
So in it, there's a character called Salieri, who's like his rival. And Salieri has this one moment where he's having a soliloquy and he's basically talking to God. And he said, why did you make me just good enough to realize how much better Mozart is. And that was exactly how I felt. I felt like I was smart enough to understand that other people were smarter and that they would go on to be successful and that I never would. And so between that and being lazy, I was crippled by fear and then didn't want to do anything about it anyway, so I would just lay in bed. But now I have this girlfriend who I've made promises to in my sort of aspirational moments that I'm going to make you rich. I've prophesized to my father-in-law, who still did not want me to marry his daughter. I left his house saying, I understand you don't want me to marry your daughter, but I am going to propose, full disclosure. And I did propose, and it ends up becoming this super awkward thing.
Yeah.
Now, my father-in-law has always been kind to me. He just didn't want us to get married. Right. So anyway, flash forward, and I finally realized, oh, there's a difference between dreaming about building a company and getting rich and all that, and actually having the skill set to do it. And through this whole time, I'm reading about the brain, and that becomes my big breakthrough, is realizing, oh, this thing called brain plasticity is real. You can learn new things. And once I had that piece of information, then it was like, dude, it's just on you. The whole Solieri speech, let go of it. You might be too dumb right now, but you can learn. And so, are you? Like, one of my favorite questions is from Seth Godin. He says, when people come and say to me, oh, I'm a terrible writer, I say, show me all your bad writing. And he was like, they can never produce any, because they're so crippled by the fact that they're not yet good, that they don't do the things they would need to do to get good. And so my life became about getting good. And I just accepted that what we now call the growth mindset, which she had not written, Carol Dweck had not written her seminal book yet, I'm very sad to say. So I had to cobble this all together. But what we would now call the growth mindset, I was like, okay, I really can change, and I can learn. And so I have to go about it. So I obsessively read about the brain because I wanted to understand the mechanisms. How does this work? And so in learning all of that,
that were like game changers, do you remember?
V.S. Ramachandran, Phantoms in the Brain, that was huge. Anything by V.S. Ramachandran.
And you were always a reader?
I was not. So in high school, it took me a year to read a single book. And I would read about a page a day. I'm still to this day a tragically slow reader, which is why I'm so obsessed with Audible.
Triple speed, apparently.
Yes.
You can really do triple speed?
Triple speed. I can listen so fast. Now, you have to train your way to it. I couldn't do that in the beginning.
Right.
But I can listen and assimilate information very quickly, and I hold myself accountable to actually using it. So when I encounter something that I like, I don't use it a week from then. I use it that day.
Right.
So I begin to cement the parts of the book that are truly usable right away. So in doing all of that, I began to change. And so to actually answer the question you asked, now my mother-in-law, who's always been ridiculously supportive like my own mother, just like either was just enamored with how good I was to her daughter, because my wife and I have always had a very good relationship, very healthy. So she could see that, and I think that's really all that mattered to her. But just always told me, yeah, you're gonna make it. And I remember I wrote this when I was living at their house. After I started feeling the shame, I started working, which at that time was to write. So I wrote a screenplay.
When you were in London?
When I was in London. She made me give her the screenplay and sign it. And she said, one day this is gonna be worth something. So that was like, I had nothing but love and encouragement coming from her. And then from my father-in-law, who's a very successful businessman who clawed his way from beyond nothing to running one of the largest shipping companies in the world. It is an extraordinary transformation that put an inordinate amount of pressure on me, but also allowed me to begin watching an entrepreneur and being like, what is this? And he would give me advice, and I would of course ignore it because I was a moron. And I really can't stress that enough. People see me, the after picture, and don't realize I'm not being humble when I say that I acted in ways that were stupid. Like, there's just no two ways about it. You have this guy who went from a tiny ass village in Cyprus to running this huge shipping company living in London, and he's saying, hey, let me tell you how I did it. And you're like, yeah. And then you just ignore it. I literally apologized to him because probably about 3 years after he gave me the advice, I was building my first company, and I was like, oh my God, he's right. So
why did you ignore it? Because you didn't think you could learn something from him, or you didn't care about business at the time?
Real answer is so pedestrian, but I will give it to you. So I was an employee at the time that he gave me the advice. And he said, if you want to climb up in a company, anytime you go into a meeting, you need to know more about the subject than anyone else. If you don't see the echo of that in the way that I interview people, then you're missing the through line. Because that became my whole interview style was, people told me I could never become a podcaster. And I was like, well, there's always room for the best. So where's the gap? People don't know anything about their guests. I'm gonna dive so deeply into these people that my goal was to get them to say something along the lines of, you know more about me than my own mother, which I got people to say many times.
Who said you couldn't be a podcaster?
I won't tell you. They're on my list. You know who they are.
Okay.
Of this, I assure you. You may have even had them on your show.
Okay.
He's a great human being, and he wasn't the only one, but he's.
And
the
did
one
that
on the
help
list.
you to a certain extent?
Putting him on the list, or the challenge? What do you mean?
Yeah, or the doubt. Does doubt fuel you?
Yeah, I'll finish this
Okay.
through
Yeah,
line and then
finish
I'll
this.
come
Yeah,
back
yeah.
to doubt.
Yeah.
So with my father-in-law, reading about the brain, I'm realizing I can transform. I really was stupid and making stupid decisions, but I got to the point where I could acknowledge that because it was no longer an acknowledgement of the person I am. It's just where I was, and that I could go somewhere else. So that became easy to start accepting my limitations and my mistakes and start moving forward. So,
And that's a powerful realization in itself. One that I would say most people watching and listening probably can never get to. That they are not stupid or they are not incapable, but where they are now it's not static, and they can be wherever they want to be if they adopt the right mindset. But a lot of people are just like, I'm no good, I'll never be good. I'll always be lazy.
yeah, that is traumatic part of life, number one. Traumatic part of life, number two, they don't want it badly enough. So even if they believe it, they will then start going, yeah, but I'm not getting anywhere. And I'll audit them and be like, yeah, because you're not working hard enough. So it's like, people just have to accept, if you're not getting the results you want, you've not learned the skills that you need to learn. It's just that simple.
And why don't they want it bad enough? Because it's not really something that's important to their core? Or do you think some people will go throughout this life and never find anything to want bad enough?
It's both, because you're never going to find deep desire. Like, all of this stuff has to be architected. So people mistake the human animal for having these things hiding inside of them, and I will just give you the punchline. They do not. So no one is born with a passion, right? You would imagine me saying that Steve Jobs was born with a passion for technology. What if he had been born 7,000 years ago, 50,000 years ago? Would he still have that? Would he be dreaming of the iPhone? No, of course not. So where you grow up is going to influence your outcomes far more than who you are. Like, this is terrifying. The greatest predictor of your future success is the zip code in which you grow up. It's not your IQ.
The Economist did a whole
That
thing
should
on
fucking
this.
terrify people.
Yeah.
So
you have a whole thing that you talk about that, right? The
Yeah.
zip code.
It's all about, like, what are you going to build? Like, at what point do you look inside the brain and go, oh, this is how it works. And so I'm going to build desire. So building desire is one of the most misunderstood things in the world. It's like when people say, oh my God, I'm in love with this woman, and they think it's going to be like that forever. And when that wanes and they break up, and they keep chasing that initial high without recognizing that's just not the truth of human neurochemistry. It's never going to be like that. So it starts, with that just all-consuming drug-like quality, and then it smooths out into something that's long-term pair bonding. And you have to know how to ride those waves. So desire is very much the same. You have to learn how to fan those flames. You have to take an ember of interest and turn it into a raging inferno. So when I was at Quest, my raging inferno, my reason for existing was to end metabolic disease. Well, now I'm doing impact theory, and I'm not thinking about metabolic disease anymore. I'm thinking about the poor mindset, and I'm trying to save people from their zip code is an easy way to think of it. And so I fanned those flames, which was something I wasn't even thinking about when I was at Quest. So it's like, you can very much pivot, you can decide, but it has to be something real. Like, these are real things. I really did care about ending metabolic disease because of my family. I really do care about the zip code being a predictor because of people I've loved in my life who have succumbed to that and my inability to help them up to this point. So it's like, you take that initial spark and then you cultivate it like you would a fire.
But you found it and you cultivated it. It wasn't something that was always going to be expressed in
Definitely
you
not.
if you could find the right place.
Definitely not. And look, if I end up realizing that this is a waste of time or whatever, I could switch to something else. Because I understand the human as a biological creature. And this is where I just lost half your audience, because there are some people they can't get behind that. But to me, life is going to be a grand struggle until you understand that you are a chemical processing plant. And once you understand how to take control of the chemical processing, and then you can do virtually anything you want. You can create desire, you can stay focused, you can improve, but you really do have to put yourself in a position to adapt or die. Your body has to believe. Those are my two options, adapt or die. And then it really will adapt. And so I put myself under that insane amount of pressure to change my body, to change my mind, and then that has, I've reaped dividends as a reward.
And so once you got that whole brain science in your head, you were like, okay, now I can treat this as a machine, as a biochemical machine, and I'm going to start playing with it and see what I can do. Correct. And you started having successes in these different parts of your life, and you became extremely focused at school, and then extremely focused on changing your body and like dieting / starving yourself. But you also showed you could do it with the right mindset. And so you started seeing that, okay, I can do this, I can do this, and I can do this. And that brought you success at Quest to a certain extent?
Very much so. So Quest so we used to joke that Quest was an overnight success 12 years in the making. So it was all the stuff that we did behind the scenes. Like, first of all, the guys who ended up becoming my partners in Quest first just hired me as a copywriter at their technology company. Right. But they used to say to everybody, look, we're looking for partners. We settle for employees. So if you want to work your way up in the company, you could even earn your way into ownership. You just have to become the right person for the job. You're going to have to, essentially break yourself in half. And like, if you see the problems that we face and you help us overcome those problems, why wouldn't we make you a partner? Because you're making the pie bigger.
They told you stop thinking like an employee and
Yes.
start thinking like an investor? No.
Start thinking like an owner.
Like an owner.
Yeah.
And then you can have any job you want. You just have to prepare yourself for that job.
Yeah, you have to have the skills, right?
Yeah.
So I ended up becoming the chief marketing officer. If you want to be the chief marketing officer, you better be the one that knows more about marketing than anyone else. Like, if we were going to do an open call for this, you better be the right person for the role. And so I took them seriously, and I watched so many people like bounce. Either they couldn't keep up, it was a very intense environment, so a lot of people just couldn't handle the intensity. And then
like long working hours, intense people.
Intense people is
in
maybe
your
a better
face,
way to
let's
say
go
it.
now, what's your problem?
Yeah, like your
Okay.
boy out there with the documentary. This is
like John Joseph.
Yeah, it's
okay, in your
it's
face.
an Iron Man, not
a little bit of hazing, hardcore. Let's
Hazing
go.
is probably not quite the right,
Okay.
but it's like, all right, motherfuckers, we're here to do this, and either you're in or you're out. You know what I mean? It was just intense. And it was the perfect thing for me. So what I needed to learn, I was very soft as a kid. Nobody told me to toughen up. I was a kid that would get hit in the leg with a soccer ball and start crying.
And walk off the pitch.
Yeah.
And quit.
100%. That was me all day long. And so now I was in an environment where it was like, yo, nobody here respects that. So like, you better fucking get it together. And that was exactly what I needed, which is why like I have a lot of pushback with where culture is going right now, because it doesn't serve, especially young men. It just doesn't serve to allow people to not, you got to toughen the fuck up. That's just the truth of it.
Right.
If you want to succeed, like, you don't have a moral obligation to be as soft as you want, but I'm here to tell you, if you have a vision of your life and where you want to go, it's going to be fucking hard. Think about running an Ironman. You have to toughen up. Like, you literally have to change your body to be capable of doing those things. And so the same is true of the mind. You have to train your mind to be capable of sticking through, working crazy long hours, learning things you don't want to do. Like, I will tell you right now, the thing that kills entrepreneurs faster than failure is boredom. People just can't do boring shit. They can't do it for extended amount of time. They can't like have a vision of who they want to become and fight through all the bullshit that they're going to have to get there. You're just going to have to. So it's like, that's why so few people end up succeeding, is just the level of tenacity you have to show is insane.
To just grind it out every day with a singular vision. Yeah.
So learning how to believe in what you're doing, learning how to connect to the mission, learning how to be passionate about what you're doing. So back to your thing, what do I think of people that say, pursue your passion? You're damn right. Otherwise, you're going to run out of energy. You just have to realize you cultivate the passion before you can pursue it.
And I love your expression, the struggle is guaranteed. So you might as well, you're going to be struggling no matter what.
For sure.
So you might as well do something that you're going to enjoy, or that's something that sits core into your being and what you love. Yeah. Technique is a word that you like to use, and you just mentioned skill set. So why don't we define that? Because this is kind of your entire philosophy of life, I think. Because the way you talk about this word, it involves not only skills and practical things, but also philosophy, purpose, and everything. So.
Yeah, so techne is an ancient Greek word that I've sort of twisted to my own means, but here's my definition. It is a set of skills that matter to you, that you work extraordinarily hard to build, so they are unique to you, that allow you to serve not only yourself, but other people. So we are a social creature. So I always want people to understand that there are certain things in you, hardwired into you, that if you ignore at your peril, and if you leverage, can really propel you forward, such as helping other people. It feels good. You were saying it's so immediate. When you do something nice for somebody, you feel that shit right then, man. It feels awesome. And like when you see people like really like fighting and just like, think of Hurricane Katrina, to use a nice American disaster, where people flew from all over to come and help and save people. And it's like, dude, people working more than 24 hours without stopping. I mean, it's just like working until they collapse. It's crazy, but when you feel like you can help another human being alleviate suffering, like, people go all in, man. That is innate to us. We want to do that. We're gonna get this neural feedback loop of, this feels awesome. I feel good. I feel urgency. Like, I cannot stop myself. I have to help. And that's so powerful. And if you can make your business about that, now all of a sudden, like, the thing for me, I hate working with my hands. I hate it. I hate grease on my hands, all that shit. And at Quest, I was the first of the 3 partners to go full time. So the other 2 continued running the software company, so we had like the fallback in case something went wrong, and I started Quest. And I was having to repair equipment, which is something I absolutely fucking hate. So when I was under equipment, and I'm talking like, you're working, it's 2 a.m. on a Friday, and your knuckles are bleeding from like trying to fix something, and you're thinking, what am I doing? I kept saying, I'm here to save my mom and my sister, because they were morbidly obese. And I knew if I couldn't give them food that they could choose based on taste that happened to be good for them, that I would literally lose them too soon. And so I was like, that's what this is about. That's why I'm here. I'm not here to get rich. I am here to save my mom and my sister.
Was that real, or was that the story you had to tell yourself to keep going?
Both. Like, if you don't understand that, like, you have to create a story, you've almost got to mythologize it. That's how you turn it into this, you know, inferno of desire. It's like, my mom and my sister didn't ask me to save them. It's not like they were in imminent peril, but it was, I chose to focus on that. Because I remember thinking, all right, I've got one partner who's really, really knowledgeable about nutrition. And I was like, if we're gonna keep working together, we should be doing something around that. He wants to do something around that. How can I connect to that? Well, I could connect to that because if we're solving metabolic syndrome, then man, my family is like primary candidate number 1. So I'm just gonna think about them. And there's a quote, it's attributed to Mother Teresa, but I'm not sure she actually said it, but I'll give it to her anyway. And that is, no one will act for the many, but people will act for the one. So basically, stop thinking about solving the world's problems. Find somebody you know and love that has that problem and solve it for them. And so I was like, cool, my mom and my sister, that's all I'm gonna think about. It's people I see all the time. I love them fucking dearly. I really don't want to lose them, so there's nothing that I have to fake. And then I just associate it to ending metabolic disease. If I can help them, the knock-on effect is that I'll help hundreds of millions, maybe 1 billion people. So, but when I'm under the machine and my knuckles are bleeding, I was definitely thinking of them. And I had the neurochemical reward.
Okay, and just quickly aside on the machine, is there an upside to doing work that you absolutely hate? Or do you think you could have skipped that? Or does that do something like callous the brain, as our good friend David Goggins would say?
Yeah, if you know how to frame it, for sure, and it would be exactly that. It's become a super powerful story. And I was aware of that at the time. I thought, hey, you're gonna get to tell the story that at 2 a.m. on a Friday, which is a real story, that you did this and you stuck through it and you won, because I was afraid we were gonna lose the product, which back then we could not afford. And if I couldn't fix the wrapping machine, we were gonna lose the product. So I'm like, dude, fucking get through this. You've got this, don't back down, not for anything, like you can figure this out. And so understanding the power of self-narrative and that I would get that cool thing, knowing that I was fighting for my mom and my sister, like getting the whole big story and telling myself over and over and over what I was doing. You hype yourself up. I mean, you state shift, right? So you go from being pissed that you're there at 2 a.m. on a Friday and your knuckles hurt to, all right, I'm a fucking stud, I will see this through, and it just changes your entire frame of reference. So it's both real and manufactured.
I can really feel you there on that night. And I used to work on my car like late at night where I couldn't see anything and my fingers are freezing. And yeah, and the thing about, it's a little bit different than what we do nowadays. Like, if you don't get that machine working, the company is like, it's fucked, right? Like, you got to get it working or you're done. And it's whether that ball bearing is there and your partners are looking at you and you make or break the company. I mean, that's real.
Yep.
It's very real when you're in a physical product business.
It's also fun, man. Like, there is something, so going back to your notion of, is it a gift to have people doubt you? It is a gift to have people doubt you if you know how to handle it, if you know how to frame it. So I keep a list of all the people who've doubted me, and I think of them. In my weakest moments, all the things that I want to do that are beautiful will not come to my aid. But thinking about the people that have doubted me and knowing they want me to fail, that in those very short, acute moments, I want to be very clear, I don't spend a lot of time there, but in those very short, acute moments, it is incredibly powerful to leverage the fact that somebody doubts you. So the one thing that I wish all entrepreneurs could have would be doubt and to have your house on the line. Because when your house is on the line, all the bullshit fades away. And it's like, I'm not trying to fix this machine because I really want to, or the story I want to tell myself. I'm not losing my fucking house. And so I came to work every day like this was do or fucking die. And most people can't play like that. Now the real question is, can I play like that now that I'm wealthy? That to me is fucking interesting. Now I've never worked harder ever in my life than I'm working right now.
Really?
1,000%.
Even at Quest?
Never.
But you were working hard
Never
there.
in my life. I was not being lazy in any way, shape, or form. I was killing myself at Quest.
Okay.
But I've never worked harder. Partly because you get better at working harder as you go.
Right.
So you get tougher, you get stronger. And so you're capable of more. So now it's like, I used to work a lot back then, but I literally now, I'll wake up usually around 3 to 4 a.m. and then I work until I go to bed at 9. So like, let's say I stop working at 8:55 to brush my teeth.
And you're going
Monday
the
through
whole
Friday.
way. And you know exactly how to get the most out of every hour.
100%.
So when you look in the mirror at the end, you're like, yeah, I just worked all day.
For sure.
And there you go. And then you see the results on the back of it.
No question.
Did we cover the technique definition? Did we get through
That's
it?
my whole definition, yeah.
Okay.
So
And so get that skill set is what it's
get
all
that
about.
skill set, something that matters to you, and then that will see you through very, very difficult times, for sure.
Okay.
Because it's about becoming someone.
Biggest lessons from Quest? You know, when you look back, the 3 biggest things that you learned from Quest?
That's interesting. Number one, money certainly is not going to change how you feel about yourself. So that's very powerful. And they say a fool never learns, a smart man learns from his mistakes, and a wise man learns from the mistakes of others. I've been a fool many times, and it seems like I'm sort of trying not to figure things out. I've been smart a fair amount of time. I've rarely been wise. One thing I wish I could have been wise about is chasing money. So I chased money for almost 10 years, just all out every day. That's what I said. I'm here to get rich, to make good on the promise that I made to my wife and to her father-in-law, or to my father-in-law, and it was soul destroying.
This was the software company you
Yeah.
did with your Quest partners before
Correct.
the nutrition company came.
Correct.
And you even walked away from that at one point because you're like, I don't like this. This isn't making me happy.
Yep.
All right. So you luckily did all that hard work on yourself. So when the money came,
Yeah.
you were actually well positioned.
And the crazy thing is, and I think a lot of people, especially today, they don't seem to understand how wealth is typically accumulated. So it's not like you're making, I mean, maybe some people do this, but you're not making $3 million a year, $5 million a year, and it just stacks up. You're building a company, and the company is accruing equity because the value is going up and you own shares in it, but you don't actually have money until you sell some of those shares. So that's what it was like for me. I was on paper, I was worth hundreds of millions of dollars, but I was still living sort of a normal middle-class life.
Because you had no cash flow,
Yeah.
you couldn't do anything in anyways.
And, you know, look, a few years into Quest, we were taking good salaries, so nobody should cry for me.
Yeah.
But it was sort of normal, upper middle class. It was not wealthy. I did not live in a mansion. It was just like a fucking house. And then we took a small investment. But when our valuation was over $1 billion, you can imagine, even at a small percentage, it's a huge amount of raw capital.
Yeah.
So I literally am holding my phone, hitting refresh on my banking app, until, because they said the money's been wired. And so I go from normal banking account to, in one refresh, crazy commas and zeros. And it was fun, don't get me wrong. But all of a sudden you go, that's interesting. I do not feel any differently. All of the insecurities I had are still there. And I already felt good about myself when I was by myself because I had to work so hard to get here and to face my inadequacies daily, to be humbled daily, to realize how dumb you can be daily. So in this whole process, I did not come to think a lot about Tom. I came to think a lot about the human animal and realizing, oh my God, we all have the ability to change. And if people really knew who I was before, because they have a hard time believing it when they see me now,
Yeah.
but I'm like, go ask my mom, who was surprised that I succeeded. Ask my father-in-law, who did not want me to marry his daughter. Ask my best friend. All the people who knew me the most were like, we did not expect you to be successful. My mom recently told me that when I told her I was going to get rich, that her and my aunts and uncles used to laugh at me behind my back because they were like, bless this kid, he's just a dreamer, but he's never actually going to get rich. So when you realize, no, there is a process to go from hopelessly average to accomplishing something really extraordinary, and that any human who meets what I call minimum requirements, unfortunately there are minimum requirements, but if you're watching this show, I promise you meet minimum requirements. So if you do that and then you put in the work, you can get the result. And I'll say that the result is fulfillment. You're not necessarily ever going to achieve wealth, but you can achieve deep fulfillment, do amazing shit, serve yourself, serve other people. Like, you can do some really, really incredible stuff.
Okay.
For sure.
That you can say you can get, but not necessarily be successful or monetarily successful.
Yeah, and I think that's far more open to people than they think. Going back to my original line of what I was talking about is, I don't want people focused on the money, because the money's not going to change how you feel. But if you focus on the fulfillment of technique, building up this rad skill set that's letting you serve yourself and other people, and then marry it to business savvy, your odds of becoming financially successful skyrocket. So that's where I hope people get their heads around that fulfillment really is the punchline. But if you want to express that in a way that generates wealth for yourself, it is very, very real. That is a very real possibility.
Imagine if you hadn't spent those 10 years pre-Quest grinding it out at the software company. I mean, imagine if, Quest had been the first company, the first time you met those guys, and 18 months later you had a big valuation. Impact Theory wouldn't exist, would it?
Impact Theory wouldn't
Maybe
exist,
not.
and I probably wouldn't have gotten wealthy myself, because that would have been their company.
Right.
But we built awareness as very lopsided. By the time we left, I had a very small percentage of ownership, but we started Quest as 3 equal partners.
To continue watching the rest of the episode for free, visit our website londonreal.tv or click the link in the description below.